Let's switch gears for a little bit now to talk about marijuana. On KGW.com, we recently featured a story from our partners over at the Portland Business Journal. They looked at the marijuana sales in each county in Oregon to determine the top pot spot. They looked at the total marijuana sales. Did you see what we did there? They looked at the total marijuana sales in each county and then took that number and divided it by the number of residents within that county. And there's one county that has held the title of top pot spot for 3 years in a row now. I can hear you mumbling at your TV now. It's got to be one of those big metro counties, or at the very least somewhere along the coast. Nope. For our answer, we have to head south and east, all the way to Malheur County. That's right, Oregon's second largest county by square miles, behind only Harney County, and with a name that literally means, in the French, misfortune. They sell a lot of pot. We think the county seal could use a little adjustment, so yes, indeed. We think that looks a little better. Marijuana Malheur. We were thinking maybe you want to change your name out there. Stop yelling at your TV. It's just a joke. But how much weed are they selling? Let's take a look at the number put together by the Portland Business Journal's data editor, Brandon Sawyer. Malheur County racked up over $104 million in cannabis sales in 2022. And when you divide that by the county's 32 residents, well, that comes out to more than $3,200 per person. Now, the low population also helps when it comes to figuring out numbers like this. The same amount of sales would be far lower per person in Multnomah County because it has a much larger population. But still, way to go, Malheur. And Malheur isn't just number one by a little bit, by the way. They are far and away the cannabis champs of Oregon. Here's a look at second place Curry County. Again, these are all ranked based on the sales per resident. Curry County's numbers come in at just over $420 per resident, and that's second place. Multiply their sales per resident by 7 and you would still not reach Malheur's amount. So the obvious question is why or how? Well, Malheur County has a not so secret up its sleeve, and it's not a fancy joint or some new strain. It's a state called Idaho. Malheur sits on the border, and Idaho is one of the few states where marijuana is still illegal in America. So dispensaries like those on the border town of Ontario, well, they say hello, people from Boise, as well as their own residents. Downtown Boise to Ontario, Oregon, to drive that's about an hour along I-84 with not very much traffic. So no, every person in Malheur County is not buying $3,200 worth of pot every year, but you can bet those dispensary owners, they're cashing in on all those Idahoans crossing the border. Their wallets and Oregon's tax coffers say, thank you very much. And speaking of taxes, Oregon's substance use disorder industry will be getting less money than initially forecast because marijuana sales across the board in Oregon were down in 2022. Yes, even in Malheur County. You'll remember that your favorite voter-approved Measure 110 uses cannabis taxes to support substance use disorder programs. And pot sales in Oregon were down 16% last year. Statewide sales fell $190 million to just under $1 billion total. Now that is a big number, but it's the first time Oregon has not hit the $1 billion mark in the industry since 2019. Every single county in the state saw a drop, according to the Portland Business Journal. Here in Multnomah County, the pot market shrank by nearly a quarter, down almost 24%. So why were sales down across the board? Well, marijuana industry tracker Headset attributes it to people buying pot less often and spending less when they did venture out to a dispensary. And they didn't have to spend as much because the state has so much supply, literally too much weed, and demand is down. Combine that with all the competition in the industry, and the shops have to keep the prices down to attract customers from other shops across town, so it becomes a price war. While lower prices are great news for consumers who enjoy using Mary Jane, the fact that sales fell so far does not bode well for tax purposes. In the latest forecast by the State Office of Economic Analysis, they're now projecting pot tax revenues in the neighborhood of about $310 million for the years 2021 and 2023. So that's still a lot of money, but it's $30 million less than they originally thought they would have coming in. In that same report, economists say data from the fall harvest show the market could strengthen next year, meaning that higher prices at the dispensaries and more tax revenue may be coming in for the state. And it's not just here in Oregon. Pot sales in Washington state slumped last year for the first time since legalization as well. Retail sales were down 8% in 2022, and the state says that equals around $120 million in unearned revenue. By the way, Washington has the highest tax on retail cannabis sales, 37%, and then they have sales tax on top of that, as well as any local taxes. Here in Oregon, much better. Our cannabis tax is 17%, with no sales tax added on either. Anyway, that industry tracker Headset also attributed Washington state's sales decline to people making fewer trips to the dispensary and spending less when they got there. So, what do you think about all this? Are you someone who regularly buys marijuana, and have your spending habits changed? Do things like inflation play a role? Or are you no longer stuck at home like you were during COVID lockdown, so maybe you're just not using it as much now? Let us know what's going on. Email the story at kgw.com or call and leave us a voicemail on the phone 503-226-5090.